Hello, 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 and I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. And oh my gosh, have we got an action-packed show for you today? So not only am I going to attempt yet another cocktail, hopefully that will indeed work. We shall see what happens with that. But also we have an amazing guest, Johnny D, who was born in Hawaii, raised in Tempe, attended Tempe Union High School, also is a broadcast major from ASU, as well as a Vietnam vet, played drums with the Sonics and Stan Devereaux and the Trendsetters, promotion man for MB Krupp Distributors right here in Phoenix, promotion man for ABC Dunhill Records in LA, sales match for Capitol Records here in Phoenix, director of European A&R Capitol Records, Capitol Records European Marketing Manager. His list goes on and on. He's also had a variety of working with radio stations. He was a program director for K15 out in Mesa, as well as KEYX in Mesa. He also has had a variety of radio shows, as well as he is considered to be, and for me, he considers himself the unofficial Arizona music historian, but I think he is the official Arizona music historian. He's also a record dealer, has been the owner of Ramco Records, a music library of masters and publishing for licensing to TV, cable, movies, internet, and advertising, as well as he's produced and compiled and written notes and consulted on 40 plus CDs and records of just Arizona music. So see, we have an amazing show for you tonight. Oh my gosh. So let's see. All right. So, and why is that showing? So again, I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. So this is a weekly show that I do as a way. So I am the hip historian, and we'll go into how I got that name in just a little bit. But I started really doing this since we're all in quarantine, and I realized I was really missing chatting with folks, sharing stories, and getting their stories. So it was an opportunity to do that. So again, thank you. If you'd like to support this show, you've got the Venmo right up there on the top of the screen. I'm also happy to say that as of next week, we will have a sponsor with Arizona AARP. So that's going to be really exciting, and I'll be able to tell you more about that. So as I said, my name is Marshall Shore, and I'm known as the Hip Historian. Now you might wonder, how does one get a name like the Hip Historian? Well, back in about 20 years ago, I was working in a library in Brooklyn, and you know what? It was winter, it was cold, and I was oh so ready for a change. So loaded up everything we own into a big orange cube, into a U-Haul, and they had their international world headquarters right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, how long have you been here? I've been here 20 years. I bet some of you beat me. You've been here longer, but I bet not all of you beat me in terms of who's been here longer. Now, as soon as I got here, promptly moved into a 1956 ranch house. I'm happy to say that it is a simplified. Now, when we bought it, it was beige on beige on beige on beige on beige on beige on beige on. I'm happy to say now it is a lovely two-tone of seafoam and cantaloupe. Now, that's pretty much what my kitchen looks like today. All that butter cream yellow tile with the matching stovetop, push button set in the wall, as well as that in-the-wall oven. Now, if you look at that door, what's missing in the oven? And someone guessed right. Indeed, it's missing a window. So if you want to bake a cake, you've got to oh so carefully open that door to check on your cake. But even more important, shut it very gingerly. Because if you let it slam, what happens? It falls. And nobody likes a flat cake. And I learned the first cake that I made in this that my mom was not indeed kidding when a fallen cake was an option, because it was an option that I didn't want, but I got anyway. Now, as soon as I got here from New York, all I kept hearing about how there was no history. But I knew that wasn't true, because every time I hopped in my car, I went somewhere, I came face to face with so many amazing adventures. And then there's that post-war boom that I say in a lot of ways made Arizona that we know and love today was really because of that post-war boom. All those GIs that either had stationed here, trained here, or passed on their way to training for somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving back here in huge numbers, and in some cases looking for a house just like mine. Now we do have this man, Dr. Carrier, which I'm sure we've all been very happy about on a day like today, where it got up to 105. So Dr. Carrier was indeed the inventor of air conditioning. So let's give him a round of virtual applause, because we're oh so happy, because without him, we wouldn't all be smiling well into the summer like we do. Now, also, the Phoenix New Times has named me Best Historian several years running, as well as Phoenix Magazine named me the Best Bespectacled Phoenix Celebrity. So, not that this is a very good venue, but, you know, what is Marshall wearing? Because I've kind of developed a reputation for my ability to overdress in every situation. And even in my own house, that's not unusual. So you might remember that every February 14th, we have a celebration for ourselves, a huge event. And to celebrate statehood, we do all kinds of things. But back in 2012, we had one heck of a celebration. It was 100 years of statehood. So we did a lot of things, but, you know, they had a whiz bang of a state capitol celebration on that February 14th of 2012. And so someone gave me 15 minutes on the main stage to talk about anything I wanted to. And I chose to talk about an event that was started back in 1926 by Charlotte Hall. It was called Masque of the Yellow Moon. Now, originally it was a flower show, but it grew bigger and bigger. It was first held in the El Zariba Shriners Temple, which is over on 15th Avenue in Washington, and still stands. It then became the Mining and Mineral Museum, but you know, they got kicked out. But happily, they're going to be moving right back into that space. So looking forward to them being into that space again. From there, it moved to Montgomery Stadium, which was our first stadium right here in Arizona. And you know what? It was home to many firsts, including our very first bowl game. Now, that's something I could sink my teeth into. I sure wish somebody would bring back the salad bowl, because I would probably sit down and go through that bowl game. And what would you expect from the salad bowl? Why, none other than the queen of the salad bowl writing in her very own salad bowl. And if you look closely, you'll notice that there's even a spoon and fork to serve with. Now, Masque of the Yellow Moon ran from 1926 to 1955. At its height, it had about 5,000 college students and high school students performing. It was one of those things where it was topped. It was said to be right up there with Mardi Gras as something that everybody in the country should go see. Now, it was woven through the curriculum of the Phoenix Union High School. So here we have the debate club doing skits. You also have multiple marching bands in front of those really huge sets. Now, I've got a story from a friend that him and his friends would go steal a little bit of that set when the show was done, drag it to his carriage house, and put on plays throughout the rest of the year in front of that cabbage set. Now, it was also known for dance and costumes. You had all these amazing young women coming out on the field wearing costumes designed by students and made by home ec. And I was lucky enough to find a few dresses in a box. And so I had some lovely friends don them And so I was able to talk about them as well as the Massive Yellow Moon. But if any of you know me, you know I'm not a very good wallflower at all. And so I talked to my friend Glenn. Now, Glenn is in his early 90s now, but when he rolled in the early 50s, he already was an accomplished sign designer. And he started actually working. The first sign he touched on was the Buckhorn Baths out in East Mesa. Here he is getting an award from the Arizona Sign Association, where he's now been inducted into their Hall of Fame. My Florist is one of his signs over on 7th Avenue in McDowell. And so happy that many of his signs still stick around. And so I had him paint a suit coat, and he did an homage to the Arizona state flag. And I think he did one heck of a job. This was actually a photo that the Arizona Republic did, actually down on 5th Avenue and Jackson, down over by the Ice House. Now, one of the reasons why I always tell this story is because you never know where the next bit of the story is coming from. You know, I was doing a program for the Arizona's First Families, and afterwards, a woman tapped me on the shoulder and said, you know, I've got something I want to show you. And so we went out to her car, and she pulled this dress out. Now, this dress was her mother's dress that she wore in the Mask of the Moon. But even better was she had the programs. And so we know this dress was worn in either 1928 or 29. She had the programs, but at that point, the librarian in me kicked in, and I didn't have those white gloves, and I didn't want to touch that super frail paper and degrade it any further with my hands. So I hope to get another chance to take a look at those and see exactly what year and number it was used for. And because it is Arizona History Happy Hour, let's see. There we go. Okay, so now let's try this. All right. Aha, so we do indeed have our little history cam. And then let's see. All right, so then we have, so, you know, when I was talking to people about what to make, I got lots of input, and I thought, you know, I feel like mixing a little bit of cognac and tequila. Since some people said, you know, C and C, cognac and cola. I thought, you know, I wanted to spice it up a little bit. So we are going to be tonight making the Dulce de Tequila. So we need our 2 ounces of tequila. All right, so we've got that. We need 1 ounce of our cognac. And then let's see. Oh. We need a shot of our Cointreau. We put in our lime juice and my special Hello Kitty ice cubes because I love Hello Kitty. So there we go. All right, so there we have our Dulce de Tequila. All All right. So cheers, everyone. Ooh, darn, that's tasty. Nice. All right. All right. And so through the magic of modern technology, oh my gosh, yes, indeed, the anticipated, the expected, and indeed we do have Johnny D joining us today. Hello,
There he
Johnny.
is. Wow.
Indeed.
Hello, Marshall.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Could you just read that bio again? That was very impressive at the start of your show.
It was. I know.
Who is that guy?
You know, it sure sounds like you. I mean, the fact that you were born in Hawaii, raised in Tempe, went to Tempe Union High School, majored at ASU.
I was just kidding. You don't have to, Marsh. Please, you don't have to. I was just.
But now,
just a poor shot at humor.
So, well, I know. I realized as I was reading it, I'm like, oh, I should have waited until it was just before you coming on, not as I was saying, hey, welcome, Johnny. I'm just so excited you're here. Oh my God.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I have a beverage too, in keeping with the theme.
Very good. I have a feeling you're not alone in that.
I hope so. I
hope there's lots of other folks out there that have a cocktail as well.
It is cocktail time here in Phoenix. Yes.
So indeed. So, I mean, so you are, I mean, for me, you are the official Arizona historian for music. So then anytime I have a music question, I run to you. If I ask anyone else, they say, go to Johnny. Oh, see, Josh says I got my cocktail. Very good.
Attaboy, Josh.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. I mean, what current projects? I mean, I know you were working on something really cool for Record Store Day that kind of got a little.
Yes, it kind of got as the whole Record Store Day. In fact, I was just talking to Jason at Zia today about it, but it's a 12-inch vinyl LP of Arizona Soul Masters. A few have been on CDs, but a lot of things that have not been on the vinyl form, other than maybe originally 40 or 50 years ago. But it's deep cuts from the Sonoran Desert, something like that, with a beautiful original cover. In any case, that is coming out in June, as I understand it, and there'll be more information because Record Store Day has kind of been changed. But Zia will have it. I'll have some for sale. So that's one that was kind of on the shelf for some time and should have been out by now. But as you were asking, on Monday, I will have my latest Ramco Records release, which is a CD by Phil and the Frantics, who were a local band. They were the house band in the basement of JD's in Tempe and have had releases over the years, but I've compiled all of the music, a couple of tracks by a band called Beethoven Soul that was related to Phil and the Frantics, and wonderful liner notes by Dan Nowicki, the full, complete story of Phil, who there were the vibratos, Phil and the Frantics, maybe Peanut Butter on a level. Obviously the Spiders, but they weren't getting the airplay or the response necessarily at the time. But Phil and the Frantics were one of the great bands in the mid 60s. And I will have that on CD available on Monday or Tuesday. And for those who get in there early, I've got a little Phil and the Frantics button too on a cheap plug for one of my projects. Nice. So that'll be what I'll be working on next week.
And so where can people find out more about you?
Well, I have a website. Funny you should mention that, Marshall. I have a fabulous website called azmusicdude.com, which is loaded with Arizona musical history. It has a listing of labels. It has a listing of vinyl and CDs, vintage vinyl and CDs by Arizona artists, plus all of my projects within the last couple of years. The last release we just put out was a wonderful Lloyd Ellis CD. As a matter of fact, I'll give it a plug right here. Lloyd Ellis, this came out about 4 months ago, and Lloyd is a fantastic jazz guitarist. Lived here in Phoenix for about 12 years, a lot of unreleased tracks. So all of that information is there. And then I also sell on eBay. So if you're interested in anything, you can plug in Lloyd Ellis, any other local Phoenix band name, and hopefully I'll pop up Stand Ever on the Trendsetters. And then you can click my sales name is Bend Over Inc., which everybody remembers. So just click on other items because I have quite a listing of Arizona related CDs and vinyl, and occasionally kind of one of a kind vinyls of Arizona things that I find. So,
and actually, my friend Carolee was so nice, she typed it in for us. So there it is.
Thank you.
That way.
There we go.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Carolee. So,
very hip listeners.
Indeed.
And viewers, yes.
So, yeah. So, all right. So, are you ready for a little bit of trivia?
Yay!
All right. All right. So, what we're going to do is, so we have 10 questions, and we're going to go through them. Now, what the beauty of this is they're multiple choice. And so, even if you don't know the answer, you can just take a guess at the answer, and you've got a 20% chance of getting it right. But unlike most trivia, where at the end of it, they just let you go, we actually have the music historian here who's going to explain all those answers to us and tell us the stories. So are you ready to start? Everyone got your pen handy? You can also type it into the comments if you want to do that. So we have 10 questions. So our first question is, who was the local black singer known as a one-man blues band, playing guitar, bass drum, and harmonica all at the same time? Oh my gosh, that must have been a sight to see. So was that A, Smilin' Whitey? Was it B, Moondog? Was it C, the Lone Wolf? Or D? Oh, Nikki, come on. It's not going to destroy your ego, because the fun thing is at the end of it, you'll know all the answers. Or D, was it Bisbee Bob? So see, I have a feeling a lot of these you're just going to guess, but that's the fun, is because then we're going to go through and talk about the answer. All right. So question 2. Before Alice Cooper became Alice Cooper back in 1968, what was the name of his very first band? Now, it was formed at Cortez High School back in 1964. So, was it A, the Roaches, B, the Earwigs, C, the Silverfish, or D, the Gnats? Which one of those do you think was Alice Cooper's very first band way back in high school? Oh my gosh, and there's a bonus question. All right. So our bonus question for this round is, what sport did the band members participate in? Now with this, it's not multiple choice, so you just get to pick any of the high school sports, and one of them will be what all the bandmates were in. All right, I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. All right. The first female country singer in America was from the White Tank Mountains of Arizona. And what was her name? Was it A, Billy Maxwell, B, Patsy Prescott, C, Patsy Montana, or D, Dorothy Page? Which one of those women were the first female country singer in the country and from the White Mountains? All right. What small town radio station employed both Lee Hazlewood and Waylon Jennings? Oh my gosh. Was it A, KAFF in Flagstaff? Was it B, KCYK in Yuma? Or was it C, K Dry in Tucson? Or D, KCKY out in Coolidge? Which
Hey,
one?
Marshall, can you hear me now?
I can.
Listen, I just want to say off the bat, because Lee Hazlewood told me one time, just spell the name right. And it is L-E. It's not E-L.
Oh.
It's Hazelwood. So I hope that was a transpo, and I hope I didn't send it to you that way.
Oh,
And
you
if I
did
did,
not. I
apologize.
saw that and assumed you had transposed them. Oh, I am so sorry.
The words ring in my ear, man. That would just spell the name right. I mean,
No,
that was like 30 years ago when I first met him. So anyway, I apologize to Lee, because he's looking down, frowning at the moment. But anyway,
no, he's not, because now you've corrected.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, and actually, now you've corrected me. I will never make that mistake again.
That's the point. Yes, people do.
Only once. Only once
Yes.
do they make that mistake.
That's right.
All right, question 5. A good-looking singer from Yuma met Phil Spector in a New York studio where he would wax pretty little angel eyes. What was his name? Was it A, Bob Waxman? Was it B, Frank Ferreira? C, Curtis Lee? Or D, Bob Easy Deal Wilson? Well, I had no idea that Pretty Little Angel Eyes was recorded by somebody who was actually from Arizona. But we'll get into that later. So I'd like, so yeah, so don't say too much. But I'm just kind of surprised. All right. So question 6. So you've made the halfway point. So see, you're almost, you're sailing right through. So the first Native American musician to have both gold and platinum awards for his original songs on the Canyon Record label. Can you name him? Was it A, Carlos Nakai? Was it B, Buffy St. Marie? Was it C, Jesse Ed Davis? Or was it D, Mary Redhouse? Which one of those was the first Native American musician to have both gold and platinum awards? So, all right. So moving on to question 7. A black singing duo raised and nurtured right here in South Phoenix would go on to record over a dozen classic soul records and then perform at the Apollo Theater back in 1967. Can you name them? Was it A, Pick and Bill? Was it B, the Simmons Twins? Was it C, Bob and Earl? Or D, Eddy and Ernie? Which one of those was a singing duo from right here in Phoenix, in South Phoenix to be in fact? All right. As we're coming into the home stretch. Now I love this question. Oh my gosh. Okay. So what kind of a device was used to help create Duane Eddy's twang guitar sound at audio recorders over on 7th Street? Was it A, a freezer? B, a car trunk? Was it C, a water tank? Or D, a grain tank? Which one of those helped Duane Eddy get that famous twang heard round the world? All right, now just a couple more questions left. Name the multi-talented musician, guitar, bass, piano, organ, and composer. See, there we get it. And there was Lee Hazlewood spelled properly that time.
Good points.
Exactly. So good. I get 1 point right there. So I'm now even keel. So he was Lee Hazlewood's first arranger and lead guitar player. Was it A, Don Cole? Was it B, Pete Pepper? Was it C, Al Casey? Or D, Donnie Owens? Which one of those was Lee Hazlewood's first arranger guitar player and could play a multitude of instruments? And then at our last question, name the two world famous jazz players who met and played together here before moving on to LA. One played the guitar and the other played the piano. They were, was it A, Lou Garneau and Sun Ra? Was it B, Lloyd Ellis and Herb Ellis? Was it C, Pete Magadini and Lewis Nash? Or was it D, Howard Roberts and Pete Jolly? So we're almost at the end. So we are at the end now. So we're going to wait a few seconds for people to catch up. Oh, let me go back to that. And so as soon as we get done from here, we are going to be moving on then to explaining the answers. All right. So who's ready for some answers? I think some of you are going to be surprised at some of the stories that come out for this. So, all right. So, Johnny.
Yes.
So, question 1, C was the Lone Wolf. Who was that black singer known as a one-man blues band? So,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about the Lone Wolf.
Well, his real name was Bob Felder, and not too much is known about him. And for years, the only thing that I knew about him was that he made a record, and the address was, it was on Felder Records. It was pressed in 1960, and that's about all I knew. Plus the fact that it was very rare, maybe 2 or 3 known copies of the record, and it is truly one of the few true blues records in the traditional sense of the blues. And he was kind of a one-man band playing the drums and the harmonica. He had a little harmonica rack around his neck, the guitar, and singing. And my dear friend Jack Miller, who was the recording engineer at Ramsey's and Audio Recorders, remembered him. And as I mentioned, I have most of the Audio Recorders tapes, and the Lone Wolf tape actually was in that collection. So I was able to actually have the tape, and some British folks actually pressed up a reproduction of it about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, and that started a lot of interest in it. And then just recently, my good friend Bob Corritor, Blues Boy Bob from KJZZ and those Lowdown Blues, a friend of his actually sent him these pictures and that article that you are now sharing with your audience. So, I mean, literally, those images are 2 weeks old. So that was the first time I actually got to see the Lone Wolf, and then found out he was here from '58 and played in quite a few of the clubs in South Phoenix. So it's wonderful to finally find an image for this wonderful record, which is also available, by the way, on eBay from my website. So check it out if you'd like to hear it. It's a great record.
Wow. So those are hot off the presses. I mean, I love how, as so many times, it's this historical community that comes together to really share stuff internationally.
Yes, very true. Yeah, it's an international world now, especially with the internet. And I mean, blues obviously isn't really a genre musically that's growing, but there are really some dedicated people. And to finally find an image, because I've been looking and collecting for years. I mean, anything that would pop up, and somehow these I missed, but these were obviously from Arizona newspapers. I think it was the Arizona Tribune, I think it was called, that these images were from. Now that all these great old newspapers get posted and digitized, we can go back 50 years and see the images and the stories.
Right. All right. Question 2. Before Alice Cooper became Alice Cooper, his very first band in high school was B, the Earwigs.
I like the Gnats, but you're right. It was the Earwigs. It was the Earwigs. But yeah, it was kind of a fluke. There was a talent show every year at Cortez High, and they kind of Vince and some of his buddies decided to spoof the Beatles as just kind of a lark, and that little moment in time turned in to a band that was the Earwigs that got quite a bit of coverage. I mean, this is a full page in the yearbook, the Cortez yearbook. And there's other pictures of the band in the yearbook. And so it was very well documented, which is wonderful to have such great early photos of the band, who then changed their name to they were the Spiders and then became the Nazz for a short time before morphing into to Alice Cooper in 1968.
Wow. All right. And then our bonus question was, what sport did the band members participate in? And the answer is track.
Yes, they were all, not all. I think, I don't know, might be missing one, but 3 of them were in the high school track team, and that's how they met.
All right. So on to 3, the first female country singer in the country from the White Tanks. I'm sorry, from the White Mountains. What was her name? Billy Maxwell.
Yes, Billy Maxwell is a wonderful, that's one of the artists that I'm very proud of, because I was kind of late to the game in discovering her. And actually, Sarah Ventry wrote a wonderful article, I'm going to say maybe 12 years ago, a little in the New Times, about her. And that kind of triggered my my wanting to know more about her and trying to find her records, because for me, it's all about the vinyl, and in this case, the shellac. But I found out that she and her family were a group in the White Mountains called the Maxwell Orchestra, which was just 4 people, her dad, her brother, and uncle. And they were invited in 1929 to El Paso, Texas, to audition for Victor Records. And Ralph Peer was touring the country recording local bands for Victor. And the Maxwell Orchestra did their songs. And then he just happened to ask, because he appreciated Billy's voice, I guess, obviously, if she had any songs. So she sang 2 songs. And then he invited her to, in a couple of weeks, and record just on her own. So she and I believe it was her uncle drove back, and they made 4 more songs, 2 more records. And so she had a total of 3 records on Victor Records between 1929 and 1930. And she was billed as the cowgirl singer and is acknowledged as the first female country singer. And all from the White Mountains. Came back, went back into farming and everything. I mean, this is just amazing to think about, just driving to El Paso in 1929. But they played for dances, and there were a couple, I guess they would have, there were some bars that had gambling in the back, and they played for weddings. And so they were just a local group that performed quite a bit, but as far as any fame, really didn't get out of there. And now the records are just collectible because they're great records. And for me, it's one of the earliest recordings of anyone in Arizona that I know of. There were the Arizona Wranglers. And then, of course, there were probably some Native American recordings made in maybe the very early 1910s or something for the Smithsonian or something. But she's the first commercial female Arizona artist on shellac.
Wow. All right. So on to question 3. So what small town radio station employed both Lee Hazlewood and Waylon Jennings?
And that's easy. KCKY in Coolidge.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Lee, it kind of, Hazelwood graduated from broadcast school in Los Angeles, kind of rode around the country to find employment. He was newly married with a baby, and this was fairly close to LA. So he took the job in Coolidge, and that's where he met the young Duane Eddy. And Duane was coming around the station looking for records. And so he and Lee started writing together. And of course, Duane was still in high school, but later he'd move up here when Lee had moved up here. and started playing with the local bands at Madison Square Garden with Buddy Long's group, and they started recording in 1950, late 57. He was up here playing. So that was the connection. And then same thing with young Waylon Jennings, just got a job there. And of course, Phoenix was the bigger city, and he was from Texas, and Lubbock, Texas, in that area, was a singer, as many of the country DJs were at that time. And so he started down there, and then eventually got a job up here and started working in Scottsdale at Wild Bill's, and then opened up, was the first band at JD's when that club opened.
Oh, I didn't realize he was the first band to play there.
Well, it opened, right. And he helped design it was a double-decker. It was the first double-decker club in Arizona. And he had such a good following at the time that Jim Musil Sr. Talked to him and said, look, we want you to open the club. And so legend has it that Waylon actually helped design the building and where to put the stage and everything. So, and he was the first artist to play there, and packed it as he was in town off and on for 6, 7, 8 years after, because even after he had a recording career and had several albums and records out, he could make more money playing there than traveling around the country night after night playing his music. And so he really established himself there. And of course, that's where Bobby Bear and other artists saw him and recommended him to Chet Akins at RCA. Hey, there's this kid in Phoenix you ought to check out. So JD's was kind of the conduit for his career.
All right. So Pretty Little Angel Eyes, recorded by a good-looking singer from Yuma, would be Lee Curtis.
Yes. No, actually,
Curtis Lee.
It could be Lee Curtis, but I like Bob Waxman myself. I made that name up, but that's another story. But no, Curtis Lee was just a good-looking kid from Yuma. Went to L.A., had a career out there, and then headed to New York. And he's one of only two. That was another part of the trivia question. Was when I first sent it in, was who are the two Arizona singers that worked with Phil Spector? And one is a guy named Tony Castle, who sang lead on a Phil Spector session at Audio Recorders by a group called the Spectors 3, which really didn't do anything. And of course, he got no credit because whoever was supposed to sing the lead couldn't. And somebody said, hey, why don't you call Tony Castle? So he came down the studio and sang it. Curtis Lee ended up in New York and ended up at Dunes Records, and Phil Spector produced the session with a wonderful group called the Halos. They've got a great black vocal group behind them, and Pretty Little Angel Eyes was just great. It made it all the way up to number 7 on the Billboard chart in 1961. And he retired. He did some other recording, but he retired to Yuma, where he was building homes down there for many, many years as a home builder. I got to actually talk to him and meet him one time down there in Yuma. But Pretty Little Angel Eyes is killer. And as you say, very few people realize that there's an Arizona connection.
I had no idea. I know that song very well.
Well, I know you want people to be educated, Marshall, and
indeed,
that is what we're doing.
That's the whole goal.
That's
so, right. All right. So how's everybody doing? I mean, we're at the halfway mark. So,
Wendy likes Billy's songs. All right. Some wonderful comments.
Yes, indeed. I know. And Michelle loves, Billy's stories. So yeah, so lots of people like her music. And I'm glad Blair was able to join us. She sneaked in at the last minute. She was running late from another meeting. So
better
yeah.
late than never.
Exactly. All right. So question 6. The first Native American musician to have both gold and platinum awards for his original songs and was on Kenya Records label was A. R. Carlos Nakai.
Yes. Yes, I'm wearing my Canyon Records hat tonight in celebration of that fact. And also the fact that my dear friend Jack Miller was the engineer on most of his recordings for Canyon. And, Canyon started out as a very small label. Ray Boley was selling Native American records at state fairs and driving up to the North Country to record different groups, and finally built a studio here and started bringing the players down here to record, and started Canyon Records he would do other custom things. So he did occasional country and stuff and rock and roll pop records, but the bread and butter was Native American music. And then he started traveling across the country and recording all of these groups, and did very well doing that. But our Carlos Nakai just managed, because of, I think it was probably the advent of New Age and that just that style and the genre of music, that they were able to market him. And he was the first artist, Native American artist, to have a gold record and then platinum records. And he still records, and it's another wonderful part of Arizona music history to have an artist of that import here involved with the Phoenix label.
Very much so. And I also love that Fat Canyon Records is the oldest still operating independent record label in the world.
You are correct. Yes.
And
yes.
so, and they're, based right here in the Valley of the Sun.
Shout out to Robert Doyle, and they's just really, yeah. And it's changing, the music business is changing. And so to be a small label, you got to have smarts and to stick in there. And they've got such a wide variety, because obviously Native American music has changed too. It's not just kind of the drum chants and things. It's really gotten much more developed, orchestrated rap, even rock and roll. But our Carlos Nakai is the premier flute player on the label.
Very cool. And then my friend Carol Lee said she actually got to meet Carlos at one point. All right. So we're into the home stretch. So the black singing duo, raised right here in South Phoenix, went on to record a dozen classic soul records and performed also at the Apollo Theater. It was Eddy and Ernie. And look at those throws.
Look at those throws. Look at the do's. And they were great. Eddie Campbell, Ernie Johnson grew up here in Phoenix, started singing in a gospel group together, and their fathers realized that the two of them had something very special. So Eddie would stay over at Ernie's house. Ernie would stay at Eddie's house. And literally, as Ernie said on his interview, that you didn't see Eddie without Ernie in those days, and they were around singing together and working together, and just developed a great style, very similar in a way to Sam and Dave, nowhere near the success. But unlike Sam and Dave, Eddie and Ernie wrote all of their songs. And I encourage you to look for a wonderful CD called Lost Friends that kind of compiled all of their music. And also, if you go to my website, azmusicdude.com, I posted a wonderful interview that we did in 2004 at the Elks Club in Phoenix. And Ernie Johnson it's about a 20-minute interview. And Ernie talks about growing up here in Phoenix, playing the Apollo, his influences. And I was lucky enough to meet him. He was literally living on the street when I met him for the first time, pushing a cart. And so I was just amazed that he was in those circumstances. But I don't want to say I guess he put up with it. It was something that he was just more comfortable that way. But I managed to get some royalties from him. And then this wonderful CD came out that Dave Godin at Ace Records in the UK helped put together, because the Brits just idolized Eddie and Ernie, and their records go for big dollars over there. So Dave Godin was the man who kind of licensed the tracks, put it together, and we managed to get Ernie some of his money, some of his royalties as a writer. The Animals covered one of his records, one of the songs that they wrote. So their music really stands up. But check out the CD Lost Friends if you're into soul music or you just want to learn something about more. It's a very solid package of Arizona music history.
Wow. All right. Question 8. What kind of device was used to help create Duane Eddy's twang guitar sound at audio recorders over on 7th Street? And it was C, a water tank.
Right. And water tank, and it's been listed as a grain tank before, but you could probably put oil in it. You can see the picture there. It's the only known picture that I have of that tank. And when they built the studio that you're looking at there, the new studio on the west side of 7th Street, they built the walls around the tank and then the studio and everything else around that. And so it was enclosed there. But originally in 58, 59, when Duane Eddy was recording, it was across the street and outside in a parking lot. It was literally outside the little audio recorders studio. And so you could, if you were walking by, you could hear the music. And I when I first started writing about this, I neglected to say empty water tank because there's a big difference. So basically they had a little speaker in one end and then they had a microphone over the opening of the tank. And so by moving the speaker with a stick, they could reach in and move the speaker closer to the microphone or further away to delay or shorten the echo, which they added to the reverb that they could get an echo on the tape machines. And so they developed this sound because in LA, Lee Hazlewood was going over there watching all of this, of course, and they had rooms, but they had rooms with no 90-degree corners. So they would build these smooth plaster rooms with walls at an angle. And those were the echo rooms. RCA had walls that you could move together or move out. But this was a very inexpensive way to create that effect that probably Hazelwood and Floyd Ramsey went out, and he really didn't have the money. So Hazelwood advanced him the money in return for studio time to buy that tank. But that is the original tank there. And when they needed space, unfortunately, they had someone come in and cut the tank up when they needed more room and audio recorders, and it was sold for scrap, unfortunately. And as I told Floyd Ramsey, if you had cut that up and sold it on a plaque to British Duane Eddy fans, you would have made a lot of money. But that's the tank, and that's the story.
Wow. We are indeed educating people here. All right. So the multi-talented musician, guitar, bass, piano, and organ. Also a composer was Lee Hazlewood's first arranger and lead guitar player. It was C. Al Casey.
Yeah, Al was the guy, and Al was playing in a group called the Sunset Riders at Madison Square Garden. And Lee Hazlewood would bring Jimmy Dell and Duane Eddy up from Coolidge every Saturday to sing at the show that was produced by Ray Odom and at Madison Square Garden. And they would sing in the boxing rink. That was the stage. And they had Jimmy Spellman and lots of other, Lloyd Klingman, lots of other local artists at the time. And that's where Lee Hazlewood ran into Al Casey. Duane was kind of his guitar guy down in Coolidge at the time, but Duane, was just starting. He was in high school, and Al had been doing this for quite some time with his wife, Corky. The two of them were quite the bass and guitar section here, and quite a few recordings. And then every Saturday night, they would do this live show. It was on the radio. It was there at Madison Square Garden. And then they did a television show also all on Saturday. But when Hazlewood recorded The Fool with Sanford Clark, who was a friend of Lee Hazlewood, they were, of Al Casey, they were high school buddies. Lee Hazlewood put Al Casey guitar on the label. And that was the first time that had ever been done. And as Al said, I didn't get any
Ah.
more money, but I got my name on the record, which got him a lot more, a lot more credit, a lot more dates. And it was really a neat thing to do because Al's guitar playing on The Fool in '56 was tremendous. He'd just taken Smokestack Lightning, the guitar riff, kind of turned it around, but it really made the record with the echo and everything. And then by 1958, when Duane Eddy started hitting, Al could play bass. He played piano on some tracks. He played rhythm guitar. So between those 2 years, Lee Hazlewood learned a lot, and Al Casey continued to be one of the premier players here. And then he was also a member of the Wrecking Crew over in Los Angeles, and he's featured in the Wrecking Crew documentary. If anybody has a chance to see that, our own Al is featured there. And he came back, kind of retired, and taught guitar at Ziggy's Music down on 3rd Street for many years and lived right next door.
All right. And now we've arrived at our last question. So how are people doing? So the world famous duo that met here before moving to LA, one was a guitarist, one was a pianist. It was D, Howard Roberts, and Pete Jolly.
Well, and I like Lou Garneau and Sun Ra. I thought that was pretty good. But anyway, no, the correct answer is Howard and Pete. And they met here and played here in Phoenix. I think Pete Jolly was 13 when he first met Howard. And they both, not together, but in 1952, Howard Roberts left a little earlier and moved to LA. And then Pete Jolly came over, and Howard got Pete a lot of music. And in the 50s and 60s, those guys were featured on tons of recordings, jazz recordings, pop recordings, and went on to have wonderful solo careers. But to think that the two of them were playing here in Phoenix, and there were some other local teachers and such that helped both of them develop their styles. It's wonderful because they are really premier players in the jazz era, and just another great part of Phoenix music history. And it's great to know that we've got so many different varieties of music here in the valley to appreciate.
Indeed. All right. So how'd everybody do out there? I mean, I know some of you are kind of struggling with this one, but I see Blair got 8 out of 11. So she got an 8 out of 10. So that's a pretty great score, I think. So now, Johnny, I normally do an Arizona history, an Arizona music bit. And since I have you on,
I bet I talked too much, didn't I?
No, but we're still going to do it. But I don't feel I can do justice. So I'm going to let you talk a little about the image you sent me of Jimi Hendrix.
Yes. How about that?
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix that was pretty amazing. That show at ASU with Soft Machine as the opening act. Yeah, that's a little flyer, and there was also a poster, and it's very, very collectible, and it's just a wonderful moment. I think that Pink Floyd also played there it was the basketball gym. So there were a couple of very, very early bands at the beginning of rock and roll, but I thought you would appreciate that image. So there's a poster and there's a flyer of that show, and they're very, very collectible if anybody out there has one of those.
Wow. That's I know the stadium. I just never expected Jimi Hendrix to be there.
Well, no, it was the basketball arena. It was next to the MU. It wasn't even the stadium. This is the basketball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it says at the
so it's Sun Devils gym.
Yeah, the Sun Devils gym. Sun Devils gym.
Okay, not the stadium. Wow.
No. So that had to be great. And I know the story, and I don't have any post, but I remember, those were early days of touring, and Pink Floyd, of course, they had a lot of stuff, so they needed a lot of electricity. And the story goes, I think that Shirley Himmelfarb at Bill's Records kind of helped book it or something at the time. So when they came up here to do the show on whatever night, they did not have enough power to do the show. So they literally had to postpone the show until the next night and do some rewire, rent some generators or something. But those were very, very early days. And if you can imagine, you know, the basketball gym with the slide out bleachers and all of that stuff.
Right.
And the sound bouncing around and the basketball, the baskets being pulled up and everything. But no, the gym hosted two very early classic shows of superstar music.
Wow. So Johnny, thank you so much for being here and sharing some of your knowledge with us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me, Marshall. And don't forget my my website, azmusicdude.com, because I'm really proud. I've got some great links there. And if you're into Arizona music at all, maybe you'll find something there or learn something. So thanks again, Marshall.
Oh, thank you. All right. So cheers.
Cheers to you.
All right. So winding down the show, we have Little Arizona, and we're going to talk a little bit about chloride. So chloride was a one-time silver mining camp. It's over in Mojave County, a population of about 200 people. It's located northwest of Kingman and just on the edge of the Surbit Mountains. Now, we do know it was occupied. You had the Wallapais who were living there, and then they actually struck a deal to let the mining happen. And so if you go there, you can still find petroglyphs that they wrote on rocks. Now, it was developed, mining was developing there in the 1840s. It was gold, silver, lead, zinc, and turquoise. Now, at its height, it had about 75 mines operating and had a population of thousands compared to now just under 300 people are living there. Now, it's also famous for Roy Purcell, who was a prospector, but also an artist. So he had some free time on his hands. So he went up and painted about 2,000 square feet of the rocks and granite on the mountainside. So you get to see, and he did this back in 1966. So you get to see some contemporary art as well as some original Native American art. Now, the post office there was established in 1862 and is the oldest continuing operating post office in the state of Arizona. Now, there's what chloride looks like now. When we can all get out and chloride is running again, they do reenactments of gun shoots out there on the street. It's a great little town, and its motto is chloride, quaint, quirky, and cool. So well worth a visit to chloride. And so, since we're running out of time, we're going to forego the Hist-O-Cam. And so, let me know if you have any questions, if you have stories you think need to be shared, or if you have suggestions or even images. I mean, like John said, he just got some of those images like 2 weeks ago, or comments on things you thought worked well, some things you think might be able to improve upon. I mean, like my friend Jason said, hey, you know, your shelving in your own house should be your backdrop. So that's what we got. So I also work with the Arizona LGBT History Project as we start documenting, collecting, and archiving LGBT history for Arizona. I'm also part of the Arizona Vintage Sign Coalition because I love neon signs and can't get enough of them. So we'll be talking about that sometime in the future as well. I'm also on the board of the Arizona Apparel Foundation, and they now have switched gears from just working with designers creating clothing. They're now creating PPE gowns for local hospitals. And they now have 4 different bays where they just have people coming in all day long and sewing hospital gowns. If you'd like to reach out, here what you can do. You can reach me out on Facebook or also email, which is hello@hiphistorian. If you'd like to support this show, you can do that at Venmo, at Marshall Shore. And so that's all I have for you this week. Now, next week, we do have the Chandler Museum coming on. So that's going to be a great show. We'll have some great Chandler, Arizona history. So again, I'd like to thank folks at AARP who next week we're going to be an official sponsor. Just wanted to give them a little plug now. And so they will be sponsoring the show. And it only happens because of sponsorship of folks like you through Venmo and AARP. So if you have any other ideas, please let me know, and have a great rest of your night and stay safe and healthy. Have a good night, everyone. Indeed, Carolee, I will see you next week. Yeah, I think we've talked about your mom and Aunt Blair before. So yeah, I would love to talk to them. So yeah, so let's make that happen. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your night.